Namaste. This year, 2024, we are observing the 17th anniversary of the golden day of the supramental manifestation, which happens once every 4 years. This will be the 17th anniversary ever since the manifestation took place on 29th February 1956. 3 questions are relevant to understand the importance of this anniversary. First, what is the supermind? Second, what happened on 29th February 1956? And third, what is the relevance of this 17th anniversary that is due to take place in a few days? First, to understand what is the supramental consciousness. Sri Aurobindo defines it in very clear terms, but also in many ways. It is the consciousness which bridges the worlds of oneness of the Satchidananda above, the triple upper hemisphere of creation, and the triple lower hemisphere of creation, of multiplicity, of division, of mind, life, matter. Supermind is the in-between linking principle. It knows oneness, it knows multiplicity, because it is the origin of this multiplicity. It is the power by which the divine manifests. This is one way to understand this. Another way to understand this is to think of it as the power of cognition by which the divine knows itself. We, living in a consciousness of an intellect, of the reasoning mind, have a very limited, shallow, divided, narrow, darkened power of cognition, which is the nature of the intelligence of the intellect. When this consciousness opens up to its own higher processes and means, when it transcends and exceeds and opens to a higher way of knowing, which is a direct vision, when it goes beyond that to the most intimate way of knowing, which we would call the intuition, and when from there it opens out to its infinity, eternity, totality, that would be the true nature of the supramental way of knowing. Or in other words, the way the divine consciousness knows itself is beyond our reasoning power. It belongs to a consciousness properly that is infinite and eternal and one and indivisible, and yet able to multiply itself unendingly, blissfully, powerfully. But this is also the origin of the entire cosmos, the entire creation, origin also of our consciousness of mind, and therefore our mind finds its origins in this, therefore supramental. And all powers of the mind are as if reflected, diluted, limited operations of powers inherent to the supramental consciousness. This being the case, in principle it is possible for us as if to open to that, to rise to that in a continuity of steps, which is then our inevitable next step in human evolution. Sri Aurobindo came not only to announce this, but to realize this in himself and to imprint that realization and into all of humanity, and to bring down that supramental consciousness as an active power operative in current human evolution. This is what we have to understand and is a critical element of the next question. But we must understand this fully because the next step of human evolution depends on this. So this brings us to the next question: what exactly happened on 29th February 1956? It was the work that Sri Aurobindo and the mother had been doing, first of all in themselves, in their own consciousness. They had reached the supramental consciousness, established it within themselves, level by level, top down, all the way to the subtle physical substance of the body. On each of these planes, the supramental was operative as a direct action, and the substance itself was transformed into a supramental in terms of a supramental consciousness. And yet this was limited to their individual realization. Their work was to manifest this at a collective level in humanity. If it was left to them, Sri Aurobindo says, they would have finished this long ago, if it was just for their bodies. But since it was for humanity, they had to as if plug into the human consciousness, and every step that they took of bringing that down and transforming was imprinted as a memory, as a potential, as a capacity, as an inevitability at every level of the corresponding consciousness in the human being, in humanity as a whole. This is an extraordinary achievement. It's an extraordinary gift for humanity. It also means they had to struggle that much more, because at every moment facing the full resistance of the human consciousness, which is only so much willing to accept, so much willing to open to this, and yet bringing it down all the way to the subtle physical consciousness. That part, beyond that, to bring it into the physical consciousness as an active force, even in the material life, and even for the transformation of the physical body. Because of certain technical details we need not go into, Sri Aurobindo found it necessary to leave his body and form a bridge from above and the mother connecting from below. And so it was after his leaving the body in 1956, on the 29th of February, that this was done. The supramental consciousness was brought down into the collective human consciousness, all the way down to the material level, as an active force in human evolution. The mother was very specific about it. She said it was the supramental consciousness and force, but not its aspect of power. She said if the power aspect had come in, it would be obvious. Nevertheless, this having come, the next step in human evolution, the organization of the supramental consciousness and force and light into the human being and its transformation in its terms, is inevitable and only a question of time. But that may take any number of years, which is not our concern. What is important is, because this is now an active force in human evolution, it is constantly influencing everything that happens. And because it's a consciousness of oneness, it embraces everything that happens. All forces, all powers. There's nothing that opposes it. Anything that comes to oppose it is already included in its totality, and therefore is used as an aid for its higher fulfillment. So it is the one consciousness which can harmonize all things, all contraries, unify them all, overcome all opposition. And even though it is not directly active in the human affairs, indirectly still, because we are not ready to open to it yet, so it operates through two levels of self-limitation and veiling, so to say. Still, the fact that it is operative ensures that this harmonization takes place inevitably, and as a consequence, the mother said there will be no more Third World War, which was always so dangerous. You will find in current affairs constantly the tendency as if a Third World War might be imminent, and yet it's always avoided because of this active working, although indirect, of the supramental consciousness. When asked what is it doing, the mother simply said it is hastening the human evolution in the way that it can move forward in the most rapid and least destructive way. So the net result of this work done, of manifesting it in 1956, is that despite human ill will, stupidity, obstinacy, resistance, its action is guiding towards a greater safety, accelerating as much as possible to the extent we consent to participate. And therefore, its full active emergence in human affairs as a power is inevitable. It's only a question of time. The working of the supramental is on so many levels at the same time, and particularly in the higher part of humanity, those who are aspiring, those who are open, its action can be relatively more direct, always within the context of your capacity to open and receive to a consciousness which is infinite. So it is often through an intuition that its action is more directly felt, but that's already one step of indirection. So this is active everywhere, and in those of us who choose to open ourselves to it, its action can be more direct relatively. Which brings us to the third question: what is the significance of this, the 17th anniversary? It is interesting that the manifestation chose the one day in the year which repeats once in 4 years. Isn't it interesting? It could have happened just one day before or one day after. Date-wise, after all, these are just human conventions. It would have happened every year. But it picked the day which, according to human convention, comes once every 4 years. You could perhaps see in it some kind of humor, but I see in it profound symbolism. And the symbolism is this 4-step. If we look at something which Sri Aurobindo writes in the little book, The Mother, he writes this, and I read. After speaking of the 4 aspects, 4 powers of the Divine Mother, only when the 4 have founded their harmony and freedom of movement in the transformed mind and life and body, can those other rarer powers manifest in the earth movement and the supramental action become possible. For when her personalities are all gathered in her and manifested, and their separate working has been turned into a harmonious unity, and they rise in her to their supramental Godheads, then is the Mother revealed as the supramental Mahashakti, and brings pouring down her luminous transcendences from their ineffable ether. Then can human nature change into dynamic divine nature, because all the elemental lines of the supramental truth consciousness and truth force are strung together, and the harp of life is fitted for the rhythms of the eternal. It's a profound passage, deeply symbolic of truths which we struggle to fully comprehend. But one thing is obvious: these 4 powers of the Divine Mother need to be, so to say, harmonized, unified, and risen to their highest station. Then we know the supramental Mahashakti. We know the Divine Mother as supramental Mahashakti. 4 powers, 4 years. I see the symbolism in that as if each year representing one of the powers being assiduously built up, either in a descending movement or in an ascending movement. And at the completion of the 4 steps and their unification comes the emergence of this revelation of the Mother as the supramental Mahashakti every 4 years. Interestingly, in the human convention, it's in 100 years, it is not 25 times that the 29th occurs. Because of the convention and calculation astronomically, the 100th year does not have a leap year. So we actually have 24 anniversaries every century of this golden day, just as an aside. But coming back to the point of this occasion, every anniversary in the human convention of dates is a symbolic realignment of the material circumstances with whatever that thing was, in this case a supramental event. Alignment of the highest source of the supramental consciousness with its manifestation in the material physical earth, the linking of these two, so to say. The anniversary of this event is on a symbolic level a realignment, a repetition, a resonance, an echo, so to say, in consciousness terms, a power of the event resonating, echoing, rippling through time. And the fact that our convention gives to it this importance gives it a certain power and an effect and an influence in human affairs, on the human consciousness collectively, because what was brought down was for the collective humanity. Therefore, this is extremely important. Or to the extent that we choose to recognize it, it can become for us extremely important. Symbolic, but a symbolism is not a fantasy, it is a reality, and therefore a real effect. In principle, by an act of conscious turning, we can align to anything at any point, on any day. But the fact that the collective human consciousness has this shared calendar and gives to it this meaning and this value, gives to the event a collective value at the level of humanity. Although individually you can have anything on any day. And so is, here we find the special importance of this occasion. It is as if, while we could align any day at any time, here it is nature and the collective human consciousness of humanity choosing to give this value and this alignment on this day. We can take advantage of this opportunity, because without our special effort, something aligns. Some resonance, some rhythm, some wave, some power of this event as if repeating, striking in an echo, but still real. How do we take advantage of this opportunity? First, by becoming conscious of it. You could, of course, be fully unconscious, ignore, and still receive a glimmer of its influence. But when you're conscious, you receive so much more and more directly. Second step, after becoming conscious, opening consciously. Because you can be closed, the water will wash over you. As Mother observed, it happened in 1956. She expected everyone to be flat from the power of the descent. People were getting up as if somnambulists, rolling up their mats and walking away, as if nothing had happened. Closed. So, opening becomes the second thing. Third, giving ourselves. It's not enough to open. You must actively give yourself to be shaped. You could open and stay rigid. No, you have to be plastic to the touch of the supramental consciousness, to the touch of the infinite, as Sri Aurobindo writes. Fourth, when you give yourself, you then receive all that pours down into you, as in a jar. And fifth, containing it, not spilling it, assimilating what is contained. So this is the fivefold nature of our effort: becoming conscious, opening to it, giving ourselves, receiving whatever pours down, and containing and assimilating without spilling. So this would be the effort that we can make, and it is an opportunity that we can take advantage of in this way. If this is possible to us individually, it is even more possible to us collectively, because as a power it was brought down for collective humanity. If all humanity could turn up, what an occasion it would be in terms of receptivity. But at least the part of humanity that is conscious, that values this, can make a difference for ourselves and through us in others. And so the fact that so many people assemble or think about and align to individually is helpful, but we could also collectively go through the same process of a collective consciousness and opening, giving of ourselves, receiving, containing and assimilating. And if we make that effort as a collective, it would have a massive collective impact and act as an active force in our collective harmonization and in a collective action of its working in humanity. Therefore, although the date is not critical from a purely consciousness perspective, because of the natural resonance and the collective shared calendar, it can become extremely beneficial on a collective level if we choose to receive as a collective humanity or a part of collective humanity. This then is the sense of the importance of this day, and those of us who feel called to it should make the necessary effort, both individually and collectively. collectively conceiving of yourself and all others as equally children of the Divine Mother, and together as children of the Mother, we open to her. And in the rhythm of the 4 years that have passed to bring us to this, we may conceive of this as the unification of the 4 powers of the Mother, and therefore the Mother as the supramental Mahashakti presiding over all creation, from whom we receive her supramental knowledge, power, harmony, perfection, love, beauty, ananda, and all else that she chooses to pour down into us. Let this be our aspiration and our effort on this occasion, and perhaps on every such occasion that occurs in the coming years and decades. Namaste.